Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books, and I'm back for, stuff is flying all over. I'm back for another book vlog to discuss the books that I am reading and have finished recently. So I wanted to just get on here really quickly and talk about the two books from the different book clubs. One is The Project by Courtney Summers, which was the February book for Peter's book club. And then I also wanted to talk about Hell in the Heartland by Jackson Miller, which is the February book for a true crime book club. I wanted to talk about those two books briefly and just kind of give a little update on what I think about those. So I actually just finished The Project by Courtney Summers. I finished it 2 nights ago or last night. I finished it 2 nights ago. I'm gonna do a sit-down review of the whole book towards the end of the month. I kind of actually wanna sit and just kind of think about what I think about the book, first of all. I will tell you I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I was blown away by the book, but probably not for the reason that a lot of people would think. So it will make more sense when I do my review, but I don't want to do my review right now because there's no way for me to really talk about the book without giving spoilers. And since it's the book for the book club, I'm gonna do it at the end of the month. So you still have 2 weeks to read The Project by Courtney Summers if you want to. I think it was fantastically done. I just think that Courtney Summers is just such a fantastic author, and I adore her. So I finished that, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I will tell you that it didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be. I really thought it would be more of a mystery thriller, which it is. And I talked a little bit about this on my vlog last night, but the mystery thriller part of the book, it appears when you're reading it that is like the main plot, and that the subplot of the book is about kind of the weaving in of this cult that the main character Lo, her sister B, is part of, this Unity project. But as you read the book, what you really realize is through the genius of Courtney Summers, that she kind of takes I don't even know that I really realized it was happening until the very end, that what she does is she kind of, through her writing and through Lo's story, shows in a very divisive writing technique the way that cults are manipulative, to the point where you're even questioning as the reader, or at least I did as the reader, like, well, maybe this cult isn't that bad. Like, I can see their positives. And it's interesting because one of my favorite documentaries that I've watched on Netflix is called Wild Wild Country, which is about this, some people call it a cult, some people don't, but it was about this guy from India that started this commune living kind of situation. And I believe it was Washington or Oregon. If you haven't seen the documentary, it's fantastic. But there were people like 20, 30 years after it had closed down and shut down and all this stuff had come out about it, that still to this day were like when they would talk about it in the interviews, they were just devastated and sad that it was gone. And it also kind of reminded me of when I had watched, I think it's a 3-part series on David Koresh, and it talked about Waco and all of that. And at the beginning of that documentary, there's a woman, and she's touring like the documentarians and showing them about Waco, and she's very like distraught talking about it, not just about what had happened, but you can see like part of the trauma is the positive experiences that she had from being part of this cult. And that's a huge part of the manipulation, you know, I think, is the salvation that these cults offer. Courtney Summers did a fantastic job of researching cults and their manipulation tactics, the language that they use. And so I think it's important to know that in reading this book, or the book will just seem like this telling of this younger sister that's trying to find her older sister, and that's really not it at all. There's a piece of carpet literally in the middle of the road. Somebody's trying to carpet the road. But that's not it at all. It's so much deeper than that. And I didn't even really realize what was happening to my thought process until I was at the end of the book. And I was like, wow, this is a lot more. And it's not just because of what she divulges at the end of the book, but because you could kind of see it there the whole time if you like looked at the evidence, that there were obviously things like big red flags and warning triggers about this cult. But when it's almost kind of like you don't believe it until it's laid out right in front of you, you know? And it was so fantastically done, and I was floored by it, and I loved it. So I finished that, and I'm going to do a full review of that towards the end of the month because, well, last time I did it when I announced my next book. So maybe March 1st, when I announce what my March book will be, I will announce, or I will do my review. I'll either do it the day or the day before, because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. That being said, I also want to ask if you have any suggestions for my March book for Peter's Book Club. I am totally open to suggestions. I would prefer that it's fiction and that it's something that is either being talked a lot about or is, you know, I don't want some just obscure book that really nobody's heard of. I want to read a book that everybody's kind of interested in reading. I don't care if it's a mystery thriller. I don't care if it's a romance. I don't care if it's historical fiction. I don't care if it's literary fiction, young adult, but something that I think would be of interest to all of us. One of the things that was interesting about the project, I talked about this on my vlog the other night, is that it is considered young adult. And Courtney and I have been actually talking back and forth a little bit. I actually do feel like I can say Courtney because I do consider us friends now. And I said to her, because I mentioned it in my vlog, that I was confused. There have been a lot of books that I have been confused why they have been considered young adult, you know, in the young adult genre. One being Dumplin by Julie Murphy. Although, obviously, the book was considered young adult because the character was younger, I don't know if, for me, that's good enough to define a book as being young adult just because the character is younger, if that makes sense. I don't know that I think, just because of who the character is, that I think that it's necessarily appropriate reading or the discussion topics in the book or the points of reference are young adult reading, if that makes sense. Because for me, Willow Dean from Dumplin by Julie Murphy there were so many kind of like adult themes to the book about grieving with her aunt that were done in, and just kind of, I think, Willow Dean's attitude towards the world. I mean, she wasn't a hugely likable character until kind of like the end, which is why I love Julie Murphy so much. I think she writes really real, vulnerable, raw, honest characters. But I don't know that I necessarily saw that it was, you know, a young adult book. And then the next one is The Girls by Emma Klein, which is similar and kind of being compared in some ways to The Project, even though it's so completely different. And that is about a woman. It's a fantastic book, and it's about a woman who is like my age, and she's looking back on her life. It goes back and forth. From when she was in a cult that was very similar to Charles Manson's cult. And that book, I was floored when I walked into a Half Price Books and I saw it in the young adult section, and I thought, how does this book belong in the young adult section? Like, this is not a young adult book. I did not, in reading The Girls by Emma Klein, I never once thought that it was a young adult book. The themes, the discussion topics, everything about it. Well, the character at the time is very young, that when she flashes back on herself, and I think that's why it's considered young adult. So I don't know, it's an interesting discussion to me of like, what is young adult, you know? Is it who's reading it, or is it who the topic is about? I think there are a lot of books that have or are centered on young characters. You know, I mean, like I just read Saint X by Alexis Shaitkin, and the book is about very similar to Emma Klein. I mean, you have an older character that's flashing back on her life of her sister being murdered on this island. The main character, you know, Allison, the one that's murdered, I mean, she's a teenager in the book, and her sister for a majority of the book, unless she's flashing back, is very young, I think 7 or 8, and then it talks about her growing up until she leaves the home. Could that be considered a young adult book? That is definitely not a young adult book, you know? So it's interesting to me how we define what young adult is. I don't know how I feel about it, you know? I don't know that I necessarily care. Would I, you know, my parents never censored what I read when I was growing up. I mean, they just encouraged whatever I wanted to read. I was reading Jackie Collins when I was like, you know, I don't even know, 12 or 13 or something like that. But I'm not really sure that I would be super comfortable with my 11 or 12-year-old reading a book like Saint X. There were some themes in there that I'm not sure that I would have personally understood at 11 or 12 years old, you know? And I was definitely not sheltered from the world, but I do think that I was, you know, at 11 or 12, I was age appropriate and understood 11 or 12-year-old themes versus 18-year-old themes, you know? I don't know. But, you know, I think today we encourage people to read above their age level. But then I think it also is important to discuss, well, what are those themes that we're talking about as well? Are they understandable themes? Is there a parent there or a teacher that's sitting there and kind of like going over these topics and issues? So I don't know, that's interesting to me. You know, there were a lot of topics in the project by Courtney Summers that I think it's a good warning. Well, first of all, it's interesting to me because the question would be, are there really that many cults out there in the world? And I know that there's a few, but it's not as much a hot topic as when I was like in high school, but I do think that the book serves as a great warning. So maybe on that level, it would be great for people that are younger to read and, you know, be aware of this kind of manipulation that occurs. So that was the project. 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. I was super impressed with it. And I was not let down. And part of what I loved about it is I love when I read authors that, other than like series writers and things like that, but that write standalones, that their standalones are not similar from the last. And this is so completely different than Sadie. If you read Sadie and you loved it, which I did, this is not Sadie. This is completely different. It's not written in the same style. And I think that shows the craft of a great, fantastic author, where one book to the next, they're so completely different that they take on new characters, they take on new plots, and I just was floored and impressed with it. So when I finished that, I was actually, it's interesting because I just finished watching a documentary on Netflix called Crime Scene, the Cecil Hotel. And then I had read The Devil's Knot by Mara Levitt about the West Memphis 3. And I had watched all these, you know, Paradise Lost documentaries, the Devil's Knot movie. I had watched all of these video clips and even tarot card readings about what happened to in Robin Hood Hills, Arkansas, I believe it is, and, you know, what happened with the West Memphis 3 and what's the truth behind that case. I watched all of this, and then it was like, I almost was kind of saturated with all of this kind of like darkness that I was almost ready just to read like a cozy mystery. I was like, I've kind of like, I don't know that I can continue to read something so kind of dark and whatever. Which is interesting because I was talking to my friend Karen from the book club, and we were talking about this kind of theme that we've been reading recently in the book club. I mean, we read about the Chris and Shanann Watts case, which was about a family annihilator. And then we read about the West Memphis 3, which was about, you know, these 3 boys that were murdered and horribly. And, you know, now we're reading Hell in the Heartland, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, which is about 2 missing girls. And it's kind of like there's a theme, you know, and Karen made some statement about it's really hard to read all this stuff one after another. And I was like, God, I totally agree with that. And actually, I talked to Mel, my partner from the book club today, and we were talking about maybe like introducing some other books. Well, March is already picked out, and it's dark too. So, but picking out some books that maybe are not so... Like, there's so much under the umbrella of true crime that it doesn't have to all be about, you know, killings and things like that. I think the one problem is that those cases are the ones that I think, as true crime fanatics, people are a little bit more pulled to, you know? And it was interesting because Karen said to me, I don't think she would mind if I told you this. She said, you know, I didn't read a whole lot of this until I was in the book club, and then I read it because, you know, like, these were the books that we were reading, which I appreciate. You know, that's, if I was in a book club that I wasn't running myself, I would read whatever book was chosen, because that's the idea of a book club, right? Is to try new things. But I think she's right. And I also think it's a great point of discussion. And I said we should have a discussion about this, like, in the book club, you know, and talk about. So she gave me some suggestions, and Mel and I are trying to look at some other ideas for other kinds of books that we can read. But I think for a lot of true crime fanatics and people that like true crime, we go to those cases that almost are the most high profile, because those are the ones that I think, you know, it was interesting because last night, after I started really getting into Hell in the Heartland, I think I'm like over 4 hours into it at this point. I'm almost to the halfway mark. It reminded me so much of the Delphi case in Indianapolis, or in Indiana. I'm like 2 hours from Delphi. And so I started watching all of these videos. I had watched some of them before, but I started watching all of these YouTube videos about the two girls that were murdered in Delphi, Indiana. And it reminded me a lot of that case. So anyway, I started Hell in the Heartland by Jax Miller. By the way, Jax Miller is fantastic. If you tweet her about this book, if you're reading it for the book club, she will respond. She has been very, very active. I know her and Mel have talked a little bit. She has just been unbelievable as far as like retweeting our things about it. She's very excited about her book, which Courtney Summers was as well for the project. And I have to tell you, I didn't know anything about this book. Mel picked this book out. She gave me like 2 books, and I was like, oh, this book looks interesting. Let's read this one. And I didn't know anything about this case, which I personally like going into true crime cases when I don't know anything about it. I like to read the book, and then I like to watch videos and find out what's happening. So this book is about this family that lived in a trailer in Oklahoma, and part of it is that Jax Miller does such a fantastic job of, like, I was talking about this on my vlog last night a little bit, that she does such a fantastic, like, I did not love, the Truman Capote book. Why can't I think of it now? I was just talking about it to Mel on the phone. What's the book called? Well, the Truman Capote book about the family that's murdered in Kansas. Wow. I can just see the cover in my head. It's just like this. Oh, why can't I think of the name of the book? But anyway, we read it for the book club, and I didn't like the book necessarily. I knew about the case, and I think I'd seen the movie, and it just was very flat to me. But the writing, in Cold Blood, the writing was beautiful. I mean, other than Truman Capote kind of invented this genre, I mean, he did invent this genre, not kind of, he did invent it. Other than that, like, his writing was so beautiful that you felt that you were there. You felt that you were in Kansas. You felt that you were at that house. I believe it was Kansas. You felt that you were at that house when it happened, you know? It very much reminds me of the beginning of, and I haven't finished this book, but Vincent Bugliosi's, the Manson murders. Why can't I think of that book? Helter Skelter, when the maid at the beginning walks inside the house and they're talking about, like, the sounds they heard the night before, like, you know, there's like the Boy Scout troop and all this kind of stuff that can, you know, I think like the campers or whatever, they can hear screams or something. You know, it's so, like, I can remember when I started reading that book and I was sitting outside on the front porch and I was terrified to be reading it. It was like, it just, like, I would hear, like, leaves run across, or, like, go across the street, and I, like, looked up. It's that kind of writing that Jax Miller has captured, where you literally feel like you are there for her, and, you know, with her. And the thing is, and she describes Oklahoma in a way that I have never been to Oklahoma, and I feel like I've been to Oklahoma, at least this part of it. And when I was talking to Mel about it, because Mel loves this book too, she said, I mean, I can't stop listening to it. I mean, I could just drive around all day today and listen to this book. When I was talking to Mel about it, Mel said, what I love about it is that she takes you along the investigation that she's going on. So you get to listen, you get to do the investigation with her, which is so, like, I think we don't really give enough credit to that in the art of true crime. These different ways that different writers, it's not just the telling of what happened, you know, whatever. And the other thing is, she is Like, this is so important. I don't think people really get this sometimes. It's so important to true crime, especially in today's time. The homage that is paid to the victims, that they're not just the characters in the story of what happened, but that they were real living people that had real lives, that had futures that were going to impact our world. And when you read about these two girls in the book, you know, it's so sad. And she does such a great job of going in and talking about, like, future farmers of America, and talking about the 4-H, and talking about, like, when she talks to, I can't remember any of the characters. Well, there's Danny and Kathy Freeman, and then Ashley Freeman and her friend Laura. So it's Ashley and Laura, and then her brother, Ashley's brother Shane, who had been killed a year before. Lorene Bible, the mother of Laura, is so unbelievable in this book. Like, Jax really, I feel like, embraces her character as, like, a strong mother that will never back down from finding the truth. So you get to go along this investigation with her, and along the way, she does such a fantastic job of paying homage to the characters, or to not the characters, to the victims and to the families. And it's just done in such a way that I don't know, like, once you start reading so much true crime, it's often that the victims are forgotten in the case. Like, with the West Memphis 3, I feel like in any discussion of the West Memphis 3, even, like, the parents get more attention than the actual victims do, if that makes sense. And that's not even really that old of a case. But I really felt that in reading The Devil's Knot. I mean, they were really, nothing much was mentioned about them at all, you know, not their grades, not really what they were interested in, not what they were like, not their favorite songs, not their, you know. It was interesting because there was a point in Hell in the Heartland, I don't know why this point was so poignant to me, but she's talking to one of Shane's friends, I think it's Shane's friend. She said, what was his favorite song? And he says, I can't remember what the one, but it's by Savage Garden. And then she laughs, and then the friend says, or I think he says Tootsie Roll or something like that. And it's like this poignant moment in the book where you really see Shane Freeman as, like, she does such a fantastic job, because, I mean, he's not even not where I'm at yet. He's not, like, a big part of the story, except for that he's kind of leading up. What happened to him and his murder by the police department is leading up to what happened with them, I think, and kind of building the foundation for that. But she does such a fantastic job of describing and dedicating quite a bit of time to Shane Freeman and who he was in this book. And it just is, like, I feel like reading the book, you know who these characters are. You know, even, like, right now I'm listening to the part where one of their friends comes over, this Deanna, who works at the hospital, to tell the parents about Shane, but then she waits until the police comes over and tells, because she doesn't want to be the one to tell them the news. Even, like, the description of Deanna is, like, you really get a feeling for who Deanna is. Whether you're a nonfiction or fiction writer, to really write about somebody and characterize them in a way that the reader really can visually see that person, and I like that she does that as well, that she visually describes them, but that you can really visually see this person and that you can really understand who they are as a person. I think it's so fantastic. I think it's not easy to do, and it's very difficult writing, and that, with also the fact that she investigated this book over many, many years. There's a part, I just got to this part in the book where she says, I stepped onto the Freeman farm for the very first time. And it's like, you get chills hearing that, you know? It's like, oh my God. Like, because up to this point, she's carried you through the case. And now you can see her out there standing on this farm with the grandfather by herself. And it's like, you almost can see the farm sitting out there, just like the burnt rubble by itself that's probably snowed over, and she's standing out there in the middle of this farm or whatever, you know, by herself with him. And it's just you just get a very kind of sinister, chilling feeling reading it. It's a fantastic book. And like I said, she pays great homage to the victims, and you can tell she really cares about them too, which I think is important. And she also really cares about the families of the victims, which I think is important too. So anyway, that's where I'm at. That's what I've been reading. I didn't think I could even go a couple minutes, let alone 24. I could talk about books all day long. I love books. My friend Tanya said to me the other day, we were just like driving around and just out of the blue, she was like out of nowhere, she said, can you just imagine your life without books? And I can't. So anyway, I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.